The Way of Blood by the Asag Covenant. Part 1. The Aftermath. Time and again, we were told the demons lurking within us were to be controlled and pacified. That part of me died long ago. As I walked through the burnt halls of charred bodies and dismembered children, I knew there was only one way to undo the whimsical nature of my society concerning the pleasures of the flesh and normalcy. This was the Way of Blood. The children, oh, the children, how they'd suffered while engulfed in flame. Despite their cries, the agony was necessary to free them so they could transcend to a new empire built by my hands. The acrid scent of smoke lingered in the air from their scorched bodies, mixing with the pungent stench of burnt wood and shattered dreams. Flames, set by my own hands, had consumed this place, leaving behind only a haunting silence and broken pieces of lives now lost forever. The destruction was recent, apparent from the still glowing embers and the faint wisps of smoke rising into the night sky. The sight filled me with exuberance. Within this glorious feat, I knew that I had shed the putrefied principles of society from my now renewed soul. As I surveyed my work across the halls, my footsteps echoed through the desolation. The sight before me was a chilling tableau. The fragility of existence and the ease with which destruction could swallow everything in its wake was evident. As I gazed upon the midst of this bleak landscape, my thoughts began to wander, spiraling into a dark abyss of contemplation. I pondered the nature of right and wrong, morality and decay. What had brought about such devastation? Was it in the hands of an external force, or the inexorable degeneracy of humanity's moral compass? The answer became all too clear as it dangled right before me. Mortality, I realized, was a fickle concept all along. It rendered life fleeting and insignificant, a mere flicker in the cosmic expanse of nothingness. In the significant complexities of existence, what did it matter if one's actions were right or wrong? Ultimately, the inferno of annihilation would consume everything, leaving behind nothing but ashes, forgotten memories, and broken dreams. My parish now stood as confirmation of this truth. It had witnessed laughter and tears, joys and sorrow, yet in the end, it succumbed to the merciless tongues of fire. And if this sanctuary of solace and hope could be reduced to ruins, then everything I believed in was factual. As I continued my solemn journey through the parish, staring in awe at my work, the crackling of the flames still echoed in my ears. The devastation seemed to seep into my soul, embodying the hollowness that plagued all of me. The flames had stripped away the illusions of purpose, exposing the cold reality beneath. In this charred wasteland, I found no solace, no redemption. Instead, everything was washed anew, leaving an open plain to begin my work, my society of ruthless survival. This blaze had stripped away the facade of morality, leaving behind only the grim truth that we were but transient beings drifting through a universe devoid of inherent significance. And through the ashes whispered a melancholic requiem, I embraced the hollow truth, savoring the taste of decay that saturated the air. For in that moment, I was liberated from the shackles of righteousness and the futility of mortal constraints. Explanation. "You're a goddamn murderer!" screamed the slaves I'd imprisoned from my parish before the flames took it asunder. 2 women and a teenage boy were all that was left of the arson that claimed those who once called me father, priest, and saint. "Why would you do this, Father? Why?" lamented the teenage Gale, still in his choir robes. Months ago, I'd forged a cell which now dwelled in the basement of my home where they now lie. My mind consumed by an unnatural euphoria, I descended into the depths of my abode with plates of digested horse meat for them to eat. A sadistic smile curled upon my lips, revealing an epiphany that had taken root in my soul. The basement, my sanctuary, awaited me with its secrets. I reached the heavy wooden door, its surface marred by the stains of time. With a creaking protest, it swung open, revealing the surreal reality that lay beyond. A putrid stench assaulted my senses, the unmistakable odor of filth, urine, and rot blending in a noxious masterpiece of my own making. The flickering light of a single dim bulb barely illuminated the room. The 2 women were in the corner, chained to the cold stone walls, their once vibrant spirits now crushed under my purpose. Their eyes, now hollow and lifeless, met mine with fear. I reveled in the mire and squalor that surrounded them. The cell bore distinctive signs of torment. Patches of dampness clung to the mold-ridden walls like the scars of my deranged machinations. The cold concrete floor was sodden with stains of bodily fluids. I approached Gale, huddled in a corner, his tiny frame shaking with terror. His formerly innocent eyes now reflected darkness. Once a magnificent white, the tattered choir robe that clung to his emaciated form was stained with soot and blood. In this wretched den, I relished the repugnant atmosphere, for it mirrored the beginning of the Way of Blood, the new religion that would be constructed by these hands. The fetid odor that drenched the air was sweet. It fueled my purpose, seeping into my very being, intoxicating me with the essence of suffering. With my 3 plates in hand, I surveyed my captives, their gaunt faces mirroring the despair that consumed them. Their feeble attempts to escape were met with only further degradation. The filth that clung to their bodies was a physical manifestation of their broken spirits. In the cellar depths, surrounded by the stench of rot, I delighted in my reign as the architect of their torment. The walls echoed in their cries. The 3 of them shuddered as I closed the door behind me, sealing off the depravity within. Filth, urine, and indescribable horrors were now the essence of my existence. "Are you ready to eat?" I asked with a smile, laying the plates in front of them. The faintest smell made Gale gag. He would be the first I'd force feed if he refused to consume. "Why are you doing this, Father Barsha? Please, just let us go," said Gale. I stood before them. Gale and the 2 women trembled, their eyes wide with fear as they awaited an explanation of their torment. I took a deep breath, savoring the power that coursed through me. "Why am I doing this, you ask? Because I've found the truth," I began. I have chosen you to be the foundation of a grand design, a secret society, a new religion which will transcend the boundaries of this banal world. A cult that will bask in the glory of darkness, where I shall be the guiding hand and you, my devoted followers. Their faces coiled with confusion and terror, their minds struggling to comprehend the depths of my depravity. But I wallowed in their vulnerability, their minds ripe for manipulation as I continued to elucidate my vision. I have long delved into the forbidden scriptures, unraveled the ancient knowledge hidden from the feeble minds of ordinary mortals. The world, you see, is blind to the true power that lies dormant within us. But I have understood something clearly at last. The elegant embroidery of secrets that the world dares not acknowledge. I am the way of blood. A smile crept across my face. I paced back and forth before them, my voice gaining intensity as I continued to reveal the depths of my aspirations. Together, we shall delve into the darkest recesses of the human psyche, embrace the forbidden arts that shatter the boundaries of reason. We shall summon ancient entities, invoke unspeakable rituals, and harness powers that defy the fabric of this reality. The way of blood, my precious minions, will catalyze a new era of suffering. We shall choke this world with an undeniable truth until it suffocates the heavens. Their breaths came in slow gasps. Their eyes locked on mine, terror reflecting in their gazes. You will be the first to witness the wonders beyond the veil of ignorance. Bound by loyalty, you three will serve as my instruments, carrying out my commands in unwavering devotion. In return, you shall relish in the glory of forbidden knowledge, elevated to a status that surpasses the mundane existence of the masses. Gale and the women, bound by fear, stared at me without words. Together we shall conquer the feeble constraints of morality and embrace our primal instincts. The world shall tremble at our presence, ignorant of the force we have become. Wide-eyed and shivering, Gale glanced at the women for solace, finding only fear mirrored in their expressions. I could see the seeds of resignation taking root in their minds, the darkness inching closer to engulfing them. And so, I concluded, my voice a chilling whisper, embrace the abyss that awaits you. Embrace the destiny that I have chosen for you. For together, we shall forge a path into the heart of darkness, and the world will tremble beneath our feet. Silence descended upon the room, broken only by the faint echoes of their ragged breaths. The die had been cast, and the foundation of my cult had been laid. Gale and the women, my first followers, stood at the height of a void from which there would be no escape. Father Parsha, whispered Jessica, her eyes meeting mine. You're fucking psychotic! She tugged on her chains and kicked over her plate of digested horse meat that took me all day long to cook, eat, and then expel from my body. You ungrateful bitch! Do you have any idea how many laxatives I had to take to shit that out for you? I threw myself to the floor, scooped up what little food I could, and placed it back on the plate. You may not see it now, but you will. All three of you were chosen for a reason. Don't you understand that? My voice was somber. You killed my parents. Now you want to kill me too? Shouted Gale. I fixed the plate and put it back in its place. I have no wish to kill any of you. The sins in your past have made you perfect candidates for many ways." Sirasha's eyes, the other captive woman, were filled with rage. "What sins does a 15-year-old boy have?" She pointed at Gale, who was cowering in the corner of the cell. I gazed at them with a smile. "Many, and I shall reveal them to you in time." The feast. I cautiously approached the floor in the dimly lit cellar. In my hand, I held the plates bearing a repulsive concoction, a dish that would assess the limits of their endurance. Gale, Jessica, and Sirasha watched with apprehension, their gazes fixed on the grotesque feast before them. "Now, my minions," I sneered, enjoying their discomfort, "it is time to participate in this exquisite delicacy I have prepared just for you. A taste of true suffering, a meal that mirrors the decay of God's forgotten world." After laying the plates of digested horsemeat before them, I revealed a knife from my waistline, placed the blade on my forearm, and cut vertically, allowing my blood to pour over the plates of shit. "Blood of my flesh, flesh of my blood. Blessed are those who are bidden to my supper." Their voices rose in protest, a disharmony of desperate pleas and disobedience. Gale's shuddering voice cracked with fear. Jessica's eyes burned with defiance, her expression fortified with venom as she swore to resist my sadistic devices. Sirasha, her face shining with disgust, voiced her refusal to submit as well. But their defiance only fueled the fire within me. My minions would need to be strong to face the world I would send them out into. With a swing, I took a large wooden spoon and stirred the blood into the digest for each plate. The spoon, dripping with the slimy substance, was a sight for the hungry soul. The stench wafted through the air, a repugnant odor that clawed at their nostrils. The prune juice and laxatives served their purpose well. I licked the spoon with scrumptious delight. Their visceral reaction made me smile as they grimaced with disgust. Gale recoiled, his eyes wide with revulsion. Jessica gagged, her hand clasped tightly over her mouth in a desperate attempt to suppress her nausea. Sirasha, her face pale, fought back the bile rising in her throat. "Behold," I declared, savoring the moment, "this exquisite feast, prepared with my hands from my body. Each bite shall remind you of the power you will yield once you submit to my vision, to the way of blood." Their protests grew louder, their voices uniting with cries of desperation. They pleaded for mercy and an end to this torment, but their words fell on deaf ears. My sadistic amusement fed upon their suffering, my power swelling with each defiant word they uttered. For a master must take pleasure in the suffering of his subordinates. That was the way of the world. With perverse satisfaction, I stepped forward with gleeful anticipation. I reached out, scooping a portion of the blood-covered shit onto the spoon. Gale, Jessica, and Sirasha locked eyes, a silent understanding passing between them as they braced themselves for a taste of my delicacy. As I moved to place the spoon before them, their hands shot out, knocking it away in a desperate act of rebellion. Chaos erupted in the cellar as their voices melded into a chorus of defiance and rage. "Get that crap away from us!" screamed Jessica. They shouted insults, spat venomous words, and fought against their restraints, united in their refusal to surrender to my dish. But with blunt force, I knocked Jessica in the head with the spoon, splashing the other two in the face with the food I'd prepared. I dove the spoon back into the plate in the center, took a giant scoop, and shoved it into her mouth. "Ugh, no, God damn you," Jessica screeched. I chuckled with a sound devoid of any remorse. "Curse me all you want," I taunted. "You are trapped within my grasp, at my mercy. There is no escape. All you can do is eat." I shoved another spoonful into her mouth. Sarisha vomited in disgust upon seeing the display. I gazed at her and laughed, because I knew that she was next. I crammed a third spoonful into Jessica's mouth, while Gale and Sarisha recoiled, their jaws ajar with dread, but their defiance remained unyielding. Finally, Gale's voice trembled, but held a glimmer of defiance. "Stop it. Please. Just stop it," he cried. "I'll stop once the three of you have cleaned your plates," I said in a commanding tone. "You can feed us that filth all you want, but you'll never break us. Do you hear me? Never," proclaimed Sarisha. Their unity threatened to unravel my authority, but I would not be influenced. Instead, I would break them, body and soul, until they submitted to my will and joined me in the way of blood. Part 2. Secrets. "No more. I can't take it anymore," Gale said, panting. I stood before them, my gaze upon their pale faces. Gale, Jessica, and Sarisha, their eyes dull and bellies full from the feast, awaited an explanation for their cruel fate. Then, with a voice sharp with sadistic glee, I began to unravel the tapestry that bound us together. "My minions," I began, my tone inundated with a sickening blend of authority and malevolence. "As I've said before, it wasn't by chance that you found yourselves here. No, each of you carries within your heart a darkness that resonates with the very core of my being. That's why I spared you the fate of the others in my parish. You will live to see the fruits of a new religion come to pass." The trio gulped. I could see the realization taking hold, the awareness that their sins had not gone unnoticed. "The sins you carry, the secrets you hide, behold! These keys will unlock the doors to untold insight," I continued. "Your misdeeds have woven a path that led you to this moment, where your destinies intertwine with each other, and now mine." Gale frowned, his youthful innocence tainted by his hidden misdeeds. Jessica and Sarisha exchanged glances, their eyes clouded with anxiety. They understood, in the depths of their souls, that their sins had become the foundation upon which my cult would be built. "Your transgressions are the fuel that will ignite the flames of our religion," I declared, my voice resonating with dark conviction. "You, dear boy, with your stolen innocence, your darkest desires suppressed beneath a facade of purity. You shall become the embodiment of temptation, a beacon for those seeking to stray from the righteous path." Gale panted, his young mind grappling with my words. Jessica and Sarisha trembled at the smell of my shit in their feeble breaths. "And you, Jessica, burdened by the shadow of deceit. Your lies are woven into the very fabric of your existence. Your gift lies in manipulation, in the art of bending the truth to your will." Jessica's breath stilled in her throat. She knew deep down that her sins had caught up with her, that her fate was inexorably entwined with Gale's. Lastly, Sarisha, haunted by the faults of your past, your hands stained with the blood of betrayal. Your strength lies in loyalty to selfishness and the unwavering commitment to your own preservation, no matter how vile. Sarisha's eyes glistened with unshed tears, her suffering palpable as the stress of her sins bore down upon her. "I've done nothing, you sick fuck!" exclaimed Jessica. "You sit here and deny your sins? Even in the face of the person you betrayed?" I gazed at Gale beside her, feeling a glint of joy. "Fuck you!" she screamed. "Lies, sins, depravity, gluttony, adultery," I hissed. Her once defiant face became somber upon my mentioning of the word. "Oh yes, Jessica, I know. What is he talking about?" asked Sarisha. "Yes, Jessica, what am I talking about?" Her eyes lowered. "Why don't you just get it off your chest? The burden of sin can only be purified with the truth. Allow the truth to be expressed to the one most harmed by it. Only then can you embrace the way of blood." I stared at Gale as I spoke. Gale, unsuspecting, met my gaze, his eyes filled with curiosity. Jessica, her face dawning with shame, shifted uneasily beside him. With a sense of delight, I began to unveil the truth that would shatter their worlds, something that she was too fearful to admit. "Oh, dear boy," I began, "there is a secret that has been concealed from you, a truth that will leave you scarred and broken." The room fell silent as the burden of my words hung in the air. Gale's brow furrowed, his innocent features adorned with confusion. "What do you mean, Father? What secret are you talking about?" I inhaled, savoring the moment before continuing. "It is Jessica, dear boy. She, your father's confidant, his trusted companion, indulged in a forbidden affair with him. Yes, Jessica and Lomas, your father, shared a love defying all moral boundaries. That was the cause of your parents' divorce." Gale began to sweat as my words sank in. His voice quaked as he struggled to comprehend the enormity of my revelation. "No, it can't be true," he whispered, his tone cracking with pain. "Why would you say that?" A sick delight washed over me as I witnessed Gale's naivete crumble, his world shattered by the disclosure of betrayal. Jessica, her face pale and eyes filled with shame, looked away, unable to meet his gaze. The truth had been laid bare, and the repercussions echoed. "You see?" I declared, my voice filled with perverse joy. "It is through pain and darkness that we are truly awakened. The knowledge of such treachery, the unraveling of a trusted bond, catalyzes our transformation." Gale's expression was one of torment, his voice unsteady with raw emotion. "How could you be happy about this? This is not enlightenment, it's cruelty." I let out a cold, mirthless laugh, cherishing the bitterness in his words. "Oh, but you see, dear boy, pain is the precursor of truth. It strips away the facade of innocence, exposing the depths of human nature. And in that admission, we find the true essence of our existence." The room buzzed with tension. "Embrace the darkness, my minions. I chose you not because of your innocence, but because of your sins," I whispered, For it is in the depths of despair that we find our true purpose." Gale stared at me angrily. Jessica and Gale gazed at one another, their emotions in turmoil, their hearts torn between anger and confusion. The exposure of the secret affair had shattered the fragile trust that once bound them together. As they locked eyes, a storm of emotions erupted between them, and I stood back and watched. "So, it's true? Why, Jessica?" Gale's voice trembled with hurt and betrayal. "How could you do this? How could you betray my mother and me?" Jessica's face contorted, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I never meant for this to happen," she choked out, her voice heavy with remorse. It was a mistake. I had a moment of weakness. I'm sorry." "A mistake? This was more than a mistake, Jessica. This was a deliberate choice, a betrayal of everything we held dear. You stood there in our parish before God and lied to my face the day I told you my parents were divorcing." I watched as their words lashed out like daggers, their pain echoing through the room. Gale's youthful innocence clashed with Jessica's guilt, creating a toxic mix of emotions that threatened to consume them. "I thought we were family," Gale continued. "You were like a sister to me, but you tore that apart, crushed our lives with selfish desires." Jessica reached out, her hand shaking as if seeking solace amid the storm. "I never wanted to hurt you," she pleaded, her voice barely a whisper. "I was lost, confused. I wish it never happened." Gale recoiled. "Weakness? Is that what you call it? You destroyed my family, shattered my trust, and now you sit here trying to justify it by saying you wish it never happened?" A torrent of emotions swirled within me as I observed their heated exchange. "I know there's nothing I can say that will make up for what I've done." The regret in Jessica's tone was intense. "Just believe me when I say I never wanted this. I never intended to hurt you or your mother." Gale's gaze hardened, his pain transforming into steely resolve. "Just leave me alone." As they continued to argue, their agony fed my insatiable hunger for power, a sickening pleasure that consumed me as their lives unraveled before their very eyes. I, the orchestrator of their pain, saw the perfect opportunity to interject, to reveal a truth that would tilt the scales of sin. "Enough," I spoke with a voice of cold authority, cutting through their emotional turmoil. Their eyes turned toward me. "Do you truly comprehend the depths of your sins?" I questioned. "Jessica, your transgressions pale in comparison to the darkness that resides within this boy." Confusion clouded their expressions as they tried to comprehend my words. Gale gasped. "What are you talking about?" he stammered. "I haven't done anything wrong." A wicked smile played upon my lips as I savored the moment. "Oh, my dear boy, you underestimate the omniscience of your captor. I know the secrets that lie dormant within your soul, secrets far more damning than any wrongdoing of Jessica's." Gale's face drained of color. Jessica stared at him, her eyes wide with intrigue. The room seemed to shrink, suffocating under their shared anticipation. "You see," I continued with sadistic pleasure, "the darkness that resides within you, the sins you have committed, far outweigh those of Jessica. Your hands are stained with acts that would make even the most wicked tremble." Tremors of fear coursed through Gale's body as he sat frozen, his mind racing. Jessica's expression shifted from anger to concern. "What has he done?" she asked. What sins has this boy done that would cause him to be here?" I opened my mouth to speak. "Stop. Please don't," he said. Gale's eyes pleaded for mercy, his voice trembling as he tried to halt the accusations from being exposed. But the truth had been laid bare, the darkness within him exposed for all to see. "Tell her, boy. Tell her that you raped her little sister. Tell her that you're the reason her sister killed herself last year. Tell her the depths of your depravity. Jessica may have driven your parents apart, but you've deprived her of a sister forever. The connection between you and her runs deeper than you can possibly fathom. Now do you see, Jessica?" I shifted my gaze from Gale to her. "Your sister's death propelled you into his father's arms. All sins always come full circle." A moment of stunned silence engulfed the room, the air heavy with the magnitude of this confession. Jessica's hands trembled as the truth crashed down upon her fragile being. No, it can't be true," she whispered. Her eyes pleaded for mercy, an escape from the horrors my words had unleashed, but I would offer no respite. "Gale's actions pushed Charlotte to the edge of despair," I continued. "He preyed upon her vulnerability, climbing into her room through the open window while the neighborhood slept, and forcing himself inside her with relentless fury. This fueled her pain until she saw no way out." Tears streamed down Jessica's face, her body trembling with sorrow, anger, and sheer disbelief. The room spun around her as the weight of the admission threatened to suffocate her. I don't understand," she choked out, her face strained with unbearable grief. "How could this be? How could this be?" "He was unable to curtail his desires the same way you were unable to curtail yours," I interjected. "This horny little teenage boy was the puppet master that orchestrated Charlotte's demise." Jessica's breathing hitched, her eyes locking with Gale's, the depths of her despair mirrored in his own tortured gaze. The realization of his role in her sister's tragic end etched itself into her shattered heart. Gale's silence and lack of protest solidified his guilt in the eyes of Jessica. "No," she sobbed. The room seemed to close in on them. Then, without warning, Jessica jumped on the teenage rapist, scratching and punching. "You little shit!" she screamed. I laughed at the act. Nothing was more amusing than watching my minions go at it. "You raped her! You little fucker!" she continued. Gale curled into a ball as Jessica continued her relentless attack. The tension in the room reached a crescendo as Jessica's sorrow morphed into an uncontrollable rage, her pain finding a target in Gale. With a primal scream, she pounded on him with the chains around her wrists, fueled by loss. I stood rooted in place, a smile curling upon my lips as chaos unfolded before me. But as Jessica's blows landed upon Gale, Sarisha intervened. "Stop!" Sarisha's voice cut through the air like a blade, sharp and commanding. With agility that belied her petite frame, she rushed between Jessica and Gale, her outstretched arms forming a barrier against the violence. "Jessica, please," Sarisha pleaded, her voice filled with empathy. "This won't bring Charlotte back. We can't let our pain destroy us here. We definitely can't buy into Barsa's shit." Jessica's eyes blazed with a ferocity that mirrored the flames of her anger. She strained against Sarisha's grip, her fists still poised to strike as her desperate cries echoed in our ears. "He deserves to suffer for what he's done," Jessica's voice cracked with wrath. Gale, cowering and defenseless, recoiled from Jessica's blows, his fears mirroring his faults. Yet as the darkness within him threatened to devour his facade of innocence, Sarisha stood resolute, her voice carrying a steady calm. "Please, just try to calm down," Sarisha insisted, her tone unwavering. Tears streaked down Jessica's face, her raging subsiding into a tremor of sorrow. Her fists slowly unclenched as she stared into Sarisha's eyes, the storm within her gradually yielding to the wisdom of Sarisha's words. I can't bear to lose myself," Jessica whispered. She appeared to be filled with exhaustion from everything that happened. Though basking in the chaos, I found a drop of frustration flicker within me. My carefully laid plans were threatened by the glimmer of humanity and compassion that Sarisha emanated. But I also knew that this fragile flame, this resolve to find another way, could be harnessed to further my agenda. It was time for me, the god of the new religion, to unveil the secrets of the worst sinner among us. "Sarissa!" I hissed, licking my lips. Slowly, the brown-eyed beauty gazed up at me, reluctance painted on her face. But the moment we met eyes, she saw my cock in her face, unleashing a stream of urine all over her face and mouth. I laughed as the droplets splashed all over her. It was a delightful sight. "Oh, stop it!" she screamed, holding her hands out before her. With the last sprinkles oozing out of me, I shook my cock in her face and returned it to its secure place. "Piss is reserved for those who are the most horrid. I swear you'll pay for this, Barsha. You killed all those people in the house of God, and now you sit here torturing us. Do you think you're going to get away with this?" shouted Jessica. I grabbed her by the hair and pulled her head back. "This isn't about escape, bitch. It's about sparking a revolution. My revolution. The new and true system of belief. We are but martyrs to the cause. Feel it. Embrace it." Sarisha tried to crawl away, but I kicked her in the gut. "And this bitch here is far worse than either of you. Isn't that right, Black Widow?" Sarisha coughed and rolled over on her back. "You've killed far more people than I have. You're even more monstrous than Gale." "You shut your fucking hole," she yelled. As the room hung heavy with a fragile peace, my gaze stilled on the resilient Sarisha, who had stood as a bulwark against the darkness. A grin crept across my face. I relished in the opportunity to exploit her vulnerabilities and twist the knife further. "Oh, Sarisha," I sneered. "You, the Black Widow spinning your web of deceit and death. How fitting that you dare stand here, preaching righteousness among the tangled threads of your own sins." Sarisha sat there in disbelief, indignation warping her features. Her mouth opened as if to protest, but I pressed on, exulting in her discomfort. "Each spouse you've lured into your web, their lives snuffed out like flickering candles," I taunted, my words sodden with contempt. "How many lives have you extinguished, Sarisha, with your venomous touch?" A tremor of fear danced across her face, her body recoiling as her transgressions settled upon her. The room seemed to darken as the air thickened with the stench of her guilt. "You have no right to judge us," Sarisha spat, her voice quivering with self-loathing. "You, who have warped morality to serve your own perverse desires, you sick bastard! You burned down a church full of innocent people!" I laughed. "Ha ha ha ha! But my sins, dear Sarisha, are merely stepping stones toward a greater purpose. While your crimes are fueled by selfish desire, my actions serve as a grand design, an embroidery of darkness woven with purpose. Sarisha's eyes narrowed. Your grand design, as you call it, is nothing more than a delusion of power and control, she shot back. You may wallow in your sick motives, but you're just as fucked as the three of us. I stepped closer to her, closing the distance between us, my eyes boring into hers with a chilling intensity. Sarisha, I huffed in her face. You know not of what you speak. I whispered, my voice low and menacing. In my religion, you will see the beauty of embracing darkness, of shedding the shackles of moral constraints. Sirasha's defiance wavered. Yet despite her words, I knew that a seed of doubt had been planted within her, a gnawing uncertainty that would fester and grow. She was, after all, a killer just like me. I turned away with a final mocking gaze, leaving Sarisha grappling with her inner turmoil. The room, tainted by our sins, seemed to vibrate with ominous energy as the battle between light and dark waged within our souls. Soon, their bodies would be transformed into my own image. Part 3. Transformation, Mutilation. The tension in the room had reached its peak, and as our sins threatened to consume us, I reeled in the grand finale of my symphony and of their impending transformation. With a smile, I approached the wall, where my self-built mechanism of gases lay in wait, ready to unleash its potent payload. My fingers caressed the intricate design, the culmination of countless hours of meticulous planning and dark creativity. "What are you going to do now?" asked Sarisha, who was sitting between Jessica and Gale. She must have felt it was her responsibility to ensure they didn't continue in their bickering. "You'll see." I bit my bottom lip. The mechanism hummed, much to their horror. I knew what awaited them. Gale, Jessica, and Sarisha. I triggered the release of the gas upon them. The mechanism sprang to life with a resounding click, setting a chain of events in motion that would seal their fate. From hidden vents, a noxious gas began to seep into the air. Its choking branches spread through the cellar like a ghostly fog. "No! No! Help! Can anyone hear us? Get us out of here!" screamed Gale. I removed my mask from the steel closet beside the trigger point and placed it on my face. As the first whispers of the gas reached their senses, a collective unease settled upon them. The room grew hazy, and the air became heavy with its sickly, acidic scent. Gale, Jessica, and Sarisha faltered, their eyes wide with alarm as the tendrils of the gas embraced them, seeking to extinguish their consciousness. "Help! Help!" Gale continued to scream. I savored their vulnerability and helplessness as they succumbed to the insidious embrace of the knockout gas. One by one, their bodies slumped, their unconsciousness dragging them into a world of darkness. The room became a montage of silence. The only sound was the soft hiss of gas filling the void. I watched with enjoyment. In their vulnerable state, they were but vessels to be shaped and molded into the loyal followers I desired. While the gas continued its relentless assault, I breathed in deeply through the seal of my mask, savoring the pungent aroma of victory. the cellar became a haven of sleep, a realm where their dreams and nightmares would frolic on the precipice of their conversion. With a final glance at the fallen trio, I savored the triumph of their incapacitation. They would awaken to a world where their bodies would be forever altered, bound to me by the chains of their own darkest secrets. The way of blood would rise, and they would be the first disciples, forever entwined in the web of darkness I had spun. I stepped away, momentarily leaving them in their slumber. Now, a den of destinies, the cellar would be the birthplace of a new era. I unlocked the barred cell, unfastened their chains, and set them each on their own meticulously cleaned, freshly shined, stainless steel mortuary trolley I'd ordered online some months ago. As the gas cleared, I removed my mask and breathed deeply. Before me sat my collection, an assemblage of instruments that would aid in morphing these minions into my image. Each tool possessed a unique purpose. My gaze scanned the array before me, taking in the gleam of polished metal and the sharp edges that promised pain and mutilation. The glint of cold steel reflected the dim light, casting an eerie sheen upon the room. These instruments, carefully chosen, had the power to reshape flesh and bones and carve bodies with precision and purpose. Oh, how they would change. So many changes. The bone saw was gleaming in the faint glow, its serrated teeth poised to sever with cold, ruthless efficiency. Its wooden handle, worn smooth by countless hands, offered a deceiving comfort, masking the cruel intent that resided within it. And next to the bone saw, the forceps beckoned with their long, slim jaws, ready to grasp and manipulate with precision. I marveled at the collection of scalpels, each possessing its own unique blade curvature. In a row, the array of probes and hooks lay patiently. Among them, the collection of needles and sutures anticipated their moment of application. Each slender, piercing point represented a gateway into the realm of revolution, a conduit for my artistry. The stitches would weave together the shattered remnants of flesh, binding my subjects to a fate of my design, to the new religion. I caressed the cold surface of a rib spreader, its metal jaws beckoning, a cruel invitation to expose the inner workings of the human torso. This instrument would grant me access to the very core of my subjects. With a final glance at the arsenal of my flesh-carving art, I gazed at the unconscious trio, my mind buzzing with the possibilities their flesh had to offer. The chamber of surgical nightmares awaited. The stage was set, and the time had come to embrace my tools, to shape and mold the flesh of the unwilling. With a pair of scissors, I cut their clothes off, leaving them bare. The smell of Sarisha was delightful. I wanted to take her unconscious body, but I had to stay focused. While enjoying the moment, I needed to remind myself this transformation was business, not pleasure. Hands shaking with excitement, I removed one of the scalpels from my skillfully placed collection and held it in my hands. Gale would be first. Eyes wide, I cuffed his genitals and sliced them off. "You won't be raping anyone ever again," I laughed. "I can't have my minions getting distracted by the pleasure of the flesh now, can I?" I said to his sleeping body. Placing his castrated penis and testicles on Jessica's stomach, I moved to seal the blood-soaked wound so he didn't bleed out. Cleaning his genitals for the second phase gave me much pleasure. Using a needle and thread, I began to sew his penis to Jessica's chest, right above her heart. Since she'd lost her sister due to Gail's sexual desires, it only seemed fitting that she should keep them close by where the love in her heart once resided. The surgical glue I purchased with the trolleys would serve a daring purpose in sealing Gail's testicles to Sarisha's ears, one on each side. This would serve to block out the screams of her many victims that most likely rang in her head. I continued my work with various slices and incisions, as well as transplants and flesh removal. Non-stop mutilation until I was satisfied with the outcome of their appearances. After hours of toiling, I had completed their transformation. The sight was more beautiful than words could form. A few days after they'd recovered, the three of them began to stir from their long, drug-induced slumber. I could barely contain myself. The moment had arrived for them to witness the fruits of my labor, the physical manifestations of their sins engraved upon their bodies. The thrill of their impending shock coursed through me, sending shivers of glee down my spine. Their eyes fluttered open, confusion and disorientation etched upon their faces. It took them a moment to realize their surroundings, to comprehend the gravity of what they'd become. And then, as their gazes fell upon their own reflections in the dimly lit room, their voices caught in their throats, their screams of horror silenced by disbelief. "What have you done?" screamed Jessica tearfully. I rejoiced in their heartache. Their eyes widened in terror as they beheld the disfigured versions of themselves that stared back from the mirror, their grotesqueness in all its glory. The rapist boy, once full of life, now bore the scars of my handiwork, his once smooth visage marred by jagged cuts and twisted scars. His right eye was replaced with a dog's asshole. His genitals removed, his skin scarred, his lips split open, his ass cheeks sewn together, and the head of a lizard sewn between his eyes. Jessica, whose beauty had once captivated hearts, now wore the marks of her sins like a deformed drapery upon her face. Her vagina stretched and scorched, tentacles of a squid where her long blonde hair used to be, and her nose split down the middle and sewn to each side of her face. And Sarisha, the Black Widow with her secrets, now wore the physical manifestation of her guilt, her very essence reflected in the mask that decorated her with a massive Black Widow spider surgically glued to her now bald head. Her eyelids replaced with spider webs, her tongue split into 4 vertical pieces, and her right arm having been swapped with her left leg. Those years training to be a surgeon before finally settling for the priesthood served me well. Their gazes darted between distorted reflections and my malevolent presence. The shock of their disfigurement left them speechless, robbing them of the ability to articulate their fear. "You sick fucking bastard!" bellowed Jessica as she dropped to her knees. With a burst of uncontrollable laughter, I held the mirror before them, ensuring they had no escape from the grotesque images that stared back at them. Their identities had been forever altered by my image of them. Thus, I thought, was the price they paid for their transgressions, a physical testament to the sins that had stained their very existence. In their screams, I glorified in the victory of my artistry, the masterpiece that stood before them. With a final, deranged chuckle, I set the mirror aside, leaving them to grapple with their shattered reflections. I then retreated into the shadows, a satisfied grin adorning my lips. The disfigurement I inflicted upon them was the first step in their transformation, the catalyst for their descent into the way of blood. My cult awaited. Part 4. Realization. For days I rained piss down on them to break whatever humanity they had left. Feasting on bugs, vomit, and bile, the three of them had lost what it meant to be civilized. They would become my creatures, my slaves, my most loyal followers. Sarisha, crawling up to the cage bars since she hadn't learned to walk on her own, gazed at me with tears. She could barely speak due to her tongue's modification, but soon she would learn to do both. Horror washed over Jessica and Gale. "I'll kill you for this," Jessica's voice, laden with anguish and fury, pierced the silence. Her eyes, ablaze with rage, locked onto mine. "You're a goddamn monster! You won't get away with this! I swear it!" Gale's voice, tinged with sorrow, joined Jessica's outcry. "You've taken everything from us. Our innocence, our lives, and now our bodies. I'll kill you, even if it means I'll die with you. Do you hear me?" Their unified cries filled the room, each word saturated with a burning desire for retribution. "You are my minions. I thought you would be happy with these alterations. The sins of the soul are now visible on the body." We stood there, staring at one another, the flames of their rage presented before me. I welcomed their threats, for it only confirmed their humanity was slipping away bit by bit. "You can scream and vow revenge, but it will all be for naught. Your fate is sealed, and your disfigurement is but the beginning of your descent. Embrace the way of blood, for it is the only path that awaits you." Once again, I retreated into the shadows, my heart brimming with sadistic satisfaction. Their rage would serve as the foundation of my cult, fueling us all further into the depths of depravity. The game had only just begun. Retaliation. 6 months had passed, and it seemed as if the trio's resolve had finally been shattered. Sarisha had learned to walk and speak with a hiss, which pleased me. We journeyed out of the depths of the decrepit cell of my basement and sat in the living room, surrounded by burning black candles. I stood tall, the embodiment of divine revelation. It was time to show the true purpose of the way of blood, the essence of my philosophy that had guided me on this path. "Sit here," I said to Gale, pointing to the center of a circle I'd drawn in blood on my carpet. "Yes, master," he responded without protest. "Where should I sit, master?" asked Jessica. "Behind him," I instructed her. They'd been completely and utterly broken. "My dear minions," I began, my voice commanding, "I stand before you today to share the ultimate truth, which has been revealed to me through divine angels. I am not merely a man bound by the chains of mortality. No, I have exceeded the limitations of humanity. I am God, and this is the new religion." The three of them gasped, disbelief shone on their faces. "You see, my devoted disciples, The concept of mortality is a shackle that binds the human spirit, restricting our true potential," I continued, my voice carrying profound conviction. "But I have transcended this mortal coil. I am not bound by the fleeting existence that plagues humanity. I am destined to rule, guide, and shape existence itself. You are to assist in this bounty." Their eyes were locked on mine. They were the chosen ones. They were the ones who understood the importance of shedding mortal limitations. "Through the way of blood, we shall teach man, woman, and child our ways," I declared. "We shall conquer the world, surpassing the trivial boundaries of time and space. As your leader and God incarnate, I shall guide you toward this grand purpose." I could sense their devotion, their readiness to forsake the ordinary existence that had kept them bound for so long. "Together, my faithful followers, we shall create a new world order, a world where mortality is but a distant memory, where the boundaries of life and death are shattered, and where I, as your divine ruler, reign supreme. We shall rewrite the rules of existence, molding reality to our whims, for we are the chosen ones, the omens of a new era." Silence hung in the air, pregnant with their realization. With a triumphant smile, I looked upon the three of them, their disfigured faces gazing at me without emotion. A satisfied smile curled upon my lips as I concluded my speech, relishing the victory of having them under my sway. But as the final echoes of my voice faded, a profound silence once again settled upon the room. The stillness was deafening, an ominous precursor to the storm of betrayal that was about to unfold. Suddenly, without warning, their gazes transformed from feigned reverence to ferocious grit. Their masks of obedience shattered, revealing the true fury that had been festering within them. In an instant, their united assault commenced, their vengeance crashing upon me like a tidal wave. "Die, you fucking shit, die!" bellowed Gale. The stench of his dog asshole eyeball grazed against my nose when he flew on top of me. I barely had time to react as blows rained down upon me from all sides. Jessica's fists pummeled my body with wrath fueled by months of suffering, while Sarisha's relentless strikes targeted with her foot hand against my face caused me much pain. Gale unleashed a primal wrath upon me. This couldn't be. How could he resist their god? Pain seared through my body as their assault intensified, their cries of rage filling the air. I staggered, bewildered by the sudden betrayal, struggling to comprehend the depth of their defiance. It had been 6 months since they began following my commands. How could this be? The shock of their uprising pierced through my body. My hands flailed in futile attempts to defend myself, but their collective strength overwhelmed me. It was a bitter irony, the architect of their pain now crumbling beneath the weight of their retaliation. The betrayal I felt, the shock of their rebellion, cut through the fabric of my infallibility. As their fists continued to rain down upon me, the room spun in a blur of agony. I could taste the bitter tang of defeat, the price to be paid for my hubris. In their triumphant onslaught, Jessica, Sarisha, and Gale exacted a vengeance that tore away the remnants of my false godhood, leaving behind only the shattered remains of a man consumed by his own malevolence. The Way of Blood. Days later, I awoke inside a large, transparent water tank that was placed into the same cell where I had encaged my minions. I was soaking in a pool of redness that I couldn't quite make out. My arms and legs were chained to the bottom of the tank, which doomed any escape efforts. With their mutilated bodies, Gale, Jessica, and Sarisha stood before me on their side of the barred cell, wearing black robes from my closet. I knew. If we pretended to go along with your sick bullshit, you'd let your guard down, said Jessica, panting. You're right, sir. We're sinners, hissed Sarissa through her diced tongue. Gale stepped forward. But you claim to be a god, a ruler above all, when in reality, you're nothing more than a deluded fool, too blind to see your flaws and too consumed by your self-righteousness to lead us. You're a sadistic man-child that should die violently. You speak of transcending mortality, of rewriting the rules of existence, yet all you've done is spread misery for your own sadistic pleasure, Jessica spat. Your cult, your religion is built on a foundation of manipulation, and we refuse to be pawns in it. My facade wavered for a moment. You dare challenge me? I made you, I shouted. Gale snickered. You may have disfigured us physically, but you've taught us an excellent lesson, that this world is built on shit, and to shit it will return. We will wreak havoc on the innocent. We will sow terror. We will inflict pain. We will embrace the way of blood, but not the way you want us to. It's too bad you will never see it, said Sarisha. Gale hoisted a hose above the cage, where it hovered just above the tank I was chained inside of. And now, you will drown in the hell you've made for yourself. You will drown in blood, said Gale. Jessica ran upstairs and flicked a lever just outside the doorway. Loud booming echoed around the house, and suddenly, more red liquid poured on my head. Droplets of it entered my mouth. That's when I knew it was a mixture of feces and blood. Human limbs and other body parts shot out of the hose and into the tank. Soon I'd be overtaken, having drowned in this filth. They must have found my stash of cadavers on the other side of the house. I splashed about. The three stared at me, smiling, waiting patiently for my death. I made you! I made you! I screamed, the blood entering my mouth. Yes, you've turned 3 people into serial killers with lust for death. Be proud, said Jessica. The container filled to the brim, engulfing me with the vile liquid. We locked eyes as I took my last breath. I struggled against the suffocating embrace of death. Panic surged through my veins, my mind racing with the recognition that my short reign was ending abruptly. Gale, Jessica, and Sarisha, united in their defiance, were the cause of my downfall, the instrument of my demise. My lungs burned, desperate for air as I thrashed against the pitiless, vile substance. The consequences of my sins and cruelty dragged me down, a relentless reminder of the pain I had inflicted upon them. It was too late for me now. I was confronted with the consequences of my actions and the futility of my self-proclaimed godhood. Images of my cult flashed before my eyes, as did the dreams I once had about its fruition. As I fought against the blood and bile, I could hear their voices echoing through the depths. Jessica's cries of anguish, Sarisha's resolute fortitude, and Gale's unbending resolve. They were the voices of the oppressed that I had transformed. The strength of their unity surpassed anything I had imagined. Together, they rose above their own tragedies, embraced a shared purpose to become one with the way of blood in their own image, not mine. And now, as I drowned beneath the load of my mistakes, I would forever be lost to the hell they would inflict upon the world. How glorious it would have been to see that. The realization of my own insignificance, my own mortality, washed over me like a merciless tide. I wasn't a god after all. I was as vulnerable as any other mortal being. As the last vestiges of life slipped away, I understood the true extent of my arrogance. And so, as my minions claimed my life, a fading memory of the horrors eternally gone in the depths of the abyss consumed me, in the renewed principles of the way of blood.